Most soil recovery advice begins with compost. Add more, wait longer, repeat. That approach works, but it assumes time is abundant and, well, damage is minimal. Ancient farmers faced different realities. Their soils were often exhausted by continuous use, erosion or poor rainfall, and they needed recovery measured in weeks, not years. Their solution was not compost first, but plants. Specifically, beans that were selected not for yield alone, but for what they did underground. When those beans are understood and applied correctly, soil structure, fertility and biological activity rebound with a speed that surprises even experienced growers. This guide explains why certain ancient beans outperform compost in early soil repair, how they were historically used, and how the same principles can still be applied today. Why ancient farmers relied on living soil repair instead of stored amendments. Before large-scale composting systems, farmers relied on crops that could rebuild soil while occupying it. Land left idle was unproductive and risky. Beans from several ancient traditions were, deliberately planted not primarily for harvest, but really for recovery. Chinese agricultural texts describe legume rotations restoring grain fields, and Roman writers documented fava beans improving wheat yields when ploughed under. Indigenous American systems relied on beans as structural and nutritional companions, not just as secondary crops. These societies understood that soil repair was a biological process, not simply a material input. What makes certain ancient beans different from modern legumes? Well, not all beans behave the same underground. Ancient varieties were often deeper-rooted, slower-growing, and honestly more aggressive in forming microbial partnerships. Many modern beans have actually been bred for quick harvest and, shallow feeding, which really limits their impact on the soil. Ancient beans such as fava, cowpea, mung bean, pigeon pea and tipari bean, they develop these really extensive root systems that honestly penetrate compacted layers, open up air channels and transport carbon deep into the soil profile. This alone, improves water infiltration and root access for future crops. So, how does nitrogen fixation work, and why can't compost quite compete at the start? Well, the key advantage of these beans lies in nitrogen fixation. Specialized bacteria, they colonize nodules on bean roots and convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant-available forms. This nitrogen is not immediately lost to leaching because it is bound within living tissue. Compost releases nutrients slowly and depends on microbial activity already present. In degraded soils, that biology is often, weak. Beans actively build the microbial workforce as they grow, creating conditions where compost later becomes effective rather than wasted. Why root exudates matter more than surface organic matter? As beans grow, they release sugars, amino acids and organic acids into the soil through their roots. These exudates feed microbes directly at the root zone, stimulating bacterial and fungal growth precisely where structure matters most. This underground feeding creates soil aggregation faster than surface compost, which, must first be broken down and transported downward. The result is improved crumb structure, better moisture retention, and reduced crusting within a single growing cycle. How ancient farmers used beans as tools, not just crops. Historical practices show beans being cut before maturity and incorporated into the soil while still green. This technique, often called green manuring, was not accidental. Young plants contain higher nitrogen concentrations and decompose quickly without tying up nutrients. To apply this today, beans are sown densely over degraded soil. Once flowering begins, but before pod formation, the plants are cut at ground level. Roots are left in place to decay naturally, feeding soil microbes and leaving behind nitrogen-rich nodules. The tops are either lightly incorporated or left as mulch. Why soil structure changes faster than fertility? One of the most immediate effects observed is physical. Within weeks, compacted soil becomes easier to work. Earthworm activity increases. Water infiltration improves. These changes occur before full nutrient release because roots act as living soil drills. This structural repair allows future compost, mulch or crops to function properly. Without it, added organic matter often sits on the surface or decomposes unevenly. So, here's the thing. These beans really outperform compost in dry or damaged soils. You see, compost actually needs moisture and active microbes to break down properly. But in dry or biologically depleted soils, well, its impact is, quite frankly, rather slow. Ancient beans, especially those drought-adapted types like cowpea and tapari bean, they manage to grow where compost really struggles, Their roots, as it turns out, seek out moisture, activate dormant microbes, and even initiate recovery, all while under stress. Rather remarkable, isn't it? This makes them especially valuable in marginal or, recovering land. What happens when beans and compost are used together? The most powerful results occur when compost follows beans, rather than, replacing them. After a bean cycle, soil biology is active, structure is improved, and nutrients are retained more effectively. Applying compost at this stage leads to faster integration, less nutrient loss, and honestly longer-lasting fertility. The ancient system was sequential, not additive. So, why did this knowledge fade from common practice, you might be wondering? Well, industrial agriculture really started to favour immediate nutrient delivery over those slower biological processes. Fertilizers ended up replacing rotations, and, compost became more of a corrective measure rather than being part of a living system. The nuanced role of beans was, reduced to yield metrics alone. Yet the evidence remains in soils that, recovered generation after generation using plants instead of products. What these ancient beans teach modern soil builders is quite profound. They teach that soil heals fastest when it is alive, that roots matter as much as residues, that nitrogen can be grown, not purchased, and that time invested in biological repair pays dividends far beyond a single season. If this guide helped you see soil not as a problem to fix, but a system to activate, do consider supporting Hydrohaven by subscribing, sharing this episode, and helping preserve agricultural knowledge that has sustained land for thousands of years.